Hey guys, Wyatt Claypool here. Truly, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith is blessed by having some of the dumbest political opponents in Canadian politics. The Alberta NDP, led by Naheed Nenshi, for some reason are trying to score points on the supposed book banning issue, but it's just turned into them arguing in favor of sexually inappropriate materials in school libraries. They tried to woke scold her on something that 90% of Albertans, if they actually know the books that are being banned, would not actually have a problem with it. And these books aren't even being banned, really. They're being banned in school libraries. You can still go out there if you're crazy and buy these things. You just can't show them to elementary, middle school, or high school kids, depending on what the content is and whether it's appropriate for certain age groups and not for others, or it's just completely inappropriate and it shouldn't be shown in the case of a book like Genderqueer. So, I want to take you guys through some of the new news about this issue because, as you know, last week, Danielle Smith pulled back a bit on the book ban. Really, it's just restricting inappropriate material from school libraries. But they came out just this morning with the revised version of it that actually specifically targets the inappropriate materials in ways that the Edmonton Board of Education cannot misinterpret. Because, of course, last week, the Edmonton Board of Education pretended like the ban was for things like The Great Gatsby and The Handmaid's Tale. High school students can't read The Handmaid's Tale anymore. I guess we're also going to have to get rid of the Bible and To Kill a Mockingbird, when obviously those would have not been actually caught up in any book ban. They were banning sexually explicit materials, especially ones that were visual based. But everyone wanted to be obtuse and make a big deal about this and try and embarrass the premier by basically maliciously complying with the orders from Education Minister Dimitrios Nicolaides and just banning a bunch of popular books and acting like this is the actual intention of the ban. Now they can't pretend, but for some reason the Alberta NDP is still trying to naysay the ban. So before I get into it, I just want to remind you guys, if you like the show, make sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe if you are not yet a subscriber, and leave a comment on what you think about this whole situation. And of course, because I am currently covering an Alberta issue, I just want to shout out some municipal candidates. If you live in Alberta, especially in the major cities, you'll be able to check out my website later. I'll have a whole list for Calgary of school board trustees and councillors to vote for. But make sure if you're in Calgary, the best person you can vote for if you want a conservative that can win is Sonia Sharp. In Edmonton, your best bet would be Raheem Jaffer. In somewhere like Medicine Hat, I would say Drew Barnes is fantastic. And I will be filling in the gaps in some places like Airdrie and Red Deer as time goes on. But here is the headline from the CBC article by Janet French here, and it says New Alberta School Books Order bans explicit images of sexual acts. And it says in the subhead, changes come after school board listed more than 200 books to remove from libraries. And that is a key point. It was not plural school boards, it was just the one in Edmonton. Isn't it kind of interesting? The most woke one was the one who pretended that this was some sort of Christian nationalist book ban, where if it doesn't comply with the 1930s Hays Code of films, then it cannot be in schools. Obviously, that wasn't what was going on. Again, this is what you call malicious compliance. The book ban is slightly vague in some areas, and so even though people obviously know the intention is to get rid of books like Genderqueer, they're going to get rid of books like The Handmaid's Tale and then get Margaret Atwood to attack the premier. But this article says Alberta's revised rules on books in schools will prohibit works containing explicit images of sexual acts, but not written descriptions of the same, according to a new ministerial order published Monday. And obviously, there can be written depictions of stuff if it is a book meant for older kids in high school, and it is obviously literary, like it's necessary for the story for what happens. But you wouldn't have that in an elementary library, which is probably also in the school order that you do not have those books with written descriptions available to very young children. But if you're in, grade 12, you can have stuff like that. But yeah, this is obviously completely uncontroversial. It goes on to say the ministerial order issued in July asked school employees to remove library materials that depicted sexual acts, including a written passage. That prompted Edmonton Board schools to assemble a list of 226 books to remove from shelves and classrooms, including well known works such as The Handmaid's Tale, The Color Purple, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, The Godfather, and Jaws. And so obviously, this is to make her look foolish when specifically they had also included written passages before because you don't want some of those books listed going to a child in grade 5. But now I want to cut over to the NDP, who haven't clued into the fact that they should probably shut up about this issue now, because they are going to look really stupid arguing about this. Here is Naheed Nenshi, the leader of the NDP, trying to still naysay the premier on something that upwards of 80% of Albertans, if they knew what the order does, would absolutely support it.
So she was going to fix the book ban in 2 hours, and it's been, I think, 4 days now. And certainly it'll be longer than that. And I can tell you exactly what's going on, which is the province made an ideological commitment in the hopes that it would help them in the Edmonton-Ellerslie by-election. And now they're trying to figure out how to actually implement that commitment. The ministerial order...
But the thing is, he has to answer, is the commitment wrong? Is it bad? That's the thing that's so Weasley here. He's acting like, oh, she's playing politics. Well, is it something people want or not? Because now you, having addressed the book ban, quote unquote book ban, it's like saying there's an alcohol ban because you can only drink if you're 18. But now that he's addressed the issue, he has to come out and state whether or not he supports it. That's kind of necessary here. You can't just say, it's politics. Okay, well, do you want genderqueer in schools? Can you or any of the fools behind you tell me if this is something that's in line with your values?
Was terrible, and anyone who read that order in July knew exactly what was going to happen, which is books like The Handmaid's Tale would get banned.
No, that's obviously not what was going to happen unless you are reading into the mind of a school board activist who wants to make the premier look bad. How is it that the Northern Board of Education, Central, ones around places like Lethbridge, Fort McMurray, Calgary, how did they all seem to understand the order and they didn't go wild banning books that it clearly did not mean? It was only the most woke NDP school board that decided to do this, and he's just playing dumb about it, that acting like, oh, it's just because there's sloppy policy work that this happened. It has nothing to do with the fact that we obviously wanted this to happen, that we wanted all these books to get banned in order to make her look bad.
When that happened, and also the premier's favorite book on right-wing ideology got banned, she woke up and said, that's not what I meant. Well, Premier, it is what you wrote. And now...
No, it wasn't. Like, the whole point was that the nuance of the order was that it couldn't include written passages for certain ages of children. Could have there been some vague wording in there that allowed someone dishonest to say, oh, they're just banning them entirely? Maybe, but the thing is that I think government should be able to operate on a certain level of common sense.
Now she's intimating that actually it's just about gay comic books. It's just about images, probably LGBT images that she doesn't want elementary school students to see. Nobody disagrees with that. But when...
What's funny is even in that little moment right there, he's trying to make it seem like, oh, she just doesn't like the gays or something like that. She just doesn't want LGBT material. It's just gay comic books. And then even in his own mind, he's like, which nobody disagrees with. I'm like, well, are you attacking her on that or are you agreeing with her? Because you're right. And I'm going to get to somebody who tried to attack Smith yesterday in a comic and it just completely backfired. But what is he talking about when it comes to, like, I don't know if he's trying to attack or agree and say this is a waste of time or not. Is it a waste of time, or are you agreeing that nobody wants these on the shelves? Because they're on the shelves. John Hilton O'Brien at Parents First, and I think it's Parents for Choice in Education. That's the group. They went into the libraries to verify they are there. Those books were there. So does Nenshi think it's a waste of time getting rid of them, or he agrees that they shouldn't be there?
They finally released the list of schools that had these materials. None of them were elementary schools. So one of two things is happening behind.
Okay, I'm sorry. So you can have porn as long as it's a high school. Oh, it's just porn in a high school. Who cares? Who cares? It's like, maybe it's wrong to have that anywhere because it's gross. No public institution should carry those books. A public library shouldn't carry those books. You can order it online if you're weird, but nobody should have access to that book. So he thinks it's okay if you're 15 and you get a copy of Genderqueer that is just literally just written like visual sexual material. There's nothing educational about it. It's just, even the person who wrote it even said it's only for adults.
Behind the scenes right now. Either they're going to get rid of all those restrictions and just say, listen, we don't want explicit comic books in elementary schools, or they're going to try and circle it and keep the restrictions in place and put in an exemption for literary classics or works of literary merit. That's what the US right has tried to do. It has failed every time.
What is he talking about failed every time? It's actually been a wildly popular policy in places like Florida.
So if I were giving advice to the premier who's going to make her bureaucrats work all weekend to try and resolve this situation, I would just say, tell them to back down and write a one-sentence ministerial order that says school boards should strive to ensure that all materials in every school are age appropriate, period. And then how about this? Fund schools. Make a deal with the teachers. Reduce class sizes.
He can say this, but when the NDP were in government, they didn't fund schools wildly more than any previous government did. So unless he's going to condemn Rachel Notley too, this is just hypocritical. Plus, at the same time, right now, Alberta, while having the youngest population of any province and has the largest classroom sizes, and it's not even exactly because of underfunding, it's because of bureaucratic bloat. If you get rid of the extra vice principals at every school and the extra counselors that you don't need, and you just put teachers back in the classroom and you had more teaching assistants, you could solve this problem. It's not a funding issue, it's a funding allocation issue. They'll say that, oh, the actual per capita spending is the lowest in Canada. Okay, well, the educational achievement rates are also the highest. So what's your point? The thing is, certain costs are actually fixed over time. When you have an education system, the more people that you add to the system, every time you add a new student to the system doesn't mean another $13,000 needs to be spent. At some point, certain things that you've paid for, you have already paid for. You've already paid for all the testing materials and the rights to certain online programming for the entire system. And so it doesn't matter if you add another kid, you don't have to go back to that vendor and say, here's another $75 so that we can use that testing material. You just get the testing material for the general size of your school system. And so again, it has nothing to do with the fact that we spend a couple $1,000s less than the average system in Canada. The problem is just that the money allocation could be better. It has nothing to do with the amount of dollar signs behind the program. It has to do with how well functioning it is. And currently, Alberta still has the best functioning system, which is a testament to the fact that money does not buy you quality. But anyways, so I want to move on now quickly to this comic because it got absolutely roasted yesterday, trying to attack the premier. This is from Theo Moudakis from the Toronto Star, trying to attack Danielle Smith because she doesn't want comics like Archie available in the schools, with her saying, we must protect children from this. And I can't show you the way people parodied this, but in general, if you don't want somebody to edit the comic or picture you put out, never have the person in the picture or the person depicted in the drawing holding something that you can easily edit. Because now what people are doing is taking the comic that cartoon Danielle Smith is holding and putting in place actual images from the sexually explicit materials. Again, this is such a stupid hill for Naheed Nenshi and the NDP to die on. Like, really? You want to fight her on whether or not porn should be in high schools? Well, they're high school students, so that makes it okay. And we have the education critic for the Alberta NDP here, Lori Sidgerton, saying, we need to start funding public education. Okay, I guess apparently we don't fund it, even though we have the best performing system. Amanda Chapman, Alberta's new Democratic Shadow Minister of Education, or I guess this is Amanda Chapman, is not Lori Sidgerton who's putting this out. Who is she? Critic for senior issues. There you go. And Amanda Chapman, Alberta new Democratic Shadow Minister for Education, issued the following statement in response to the UCP government's revised book ban. Quote, the UCP government refuses to admit they've made a mistake. Instead, they are doubling down on their book ban. Okay, well, your leader has agreed with aspects of it, so what's your point? Quote, these changes include increased cushion for parents, schools, and teachers when the issue of age appropriate books was already being dealt with. Nothing today addresses the additional burden placed on teachers and school staff to catalog books that contravene the UCP government's gaslighting ministerial order instead of ensuring everyone understands only age appropriate books are in schools. Now the government is putting parents against schools just because somebody doesn't like a book. Okay, somebody doesn't like a book. Name the books. Defend those books. Nobody's saying that we should pause school for a week and then run through the libraries trying to find anything we don't like. If it comes up and it's obviously age inappropriate, it's obviously just flat out inappropriate for anybody to be reading, let's just have an agreement that we should probably get rid of it. That's all people are looking for. Nobody's going to come rip Harry Potter off the shelves. Nobody's going to rip The Handmaid's Tale off of high school bookshelves. We just don't want, explicit images being in any school. It's so weird. Like, I keep going back to it. It's so weird. Naheed Nenshi thinks that the ticket for him on this issue is just saying, these are already banned in elementary schools. Okay, does he want to see polling on if Canadian parents, Alberta parents, think it's good depending on the age? Just legitimately, just sexual acts depicted in a book are just perfectly cool for kids. As long as you're 14 years old, as long as you're 30, what's the age cutoff for him? I'd like to know, because I feel like that will answer more questions about Nenshi than it does about what age inappropriate books in schools look like or not. That seems rather odd that he has a very hard and fast rule on who should be looking at sexual activity and who shouldn't be looking at it in terms of young minor children. Anyways, so that should be it for this video, guys. I hope the NDP keeps tripling down on their opposition to what is a very popular issue for the UCP, and it's because they're running on nothing. The NDP is so broken at this point, they believe that it's also going to help them to oppose coal mining in the Rockies. Yeah, let's just take away more working class people's jobs. I actually opposed when we phased out coal power in Alberta, and I even criticized both Kenney and Smith for kind of carrying through with the ban. The NDP put it in place, but I'm like, it doesn't matter if the ban has already almost taken full effect. Reverse it. It was wrong to do in the first place. But now the NDP, again, is doubling down on something unpopular because getting rid of coal power has caused there to be near energy shortages in Alberta when it's super hot outside or when it's super cold, in favor of windmills and solar panels that barely work when also we are experiencing extreme temperatures. And now they want to say just, oh yeah, no mining at all. No mining at all. Maybe they're trying to capture the 1% of greenie voters who think that we should not extract a single resource from the ground ever because it might upset a penguin somewhere or whatever. Anyways, but with that being said, guys, just want to remind you again, especially if you live in the city of Calgary, get a lawn sign for Sonia Sharp. We want to make sure to litter the entire city with these things. I'm getting a lawn sign. I'm also getting one for my local council candidate that I like in Ward 6, Joanne Burse. There's this guy, John Pantazopoulos, running in Ward 6, who I see a lot of people have signs up for. I've heard that his campaign is being run by an Alberta NDP manager, and everything I read about the guy just strikes me as generic stuff that a lot of bad council candidates say to make them sound somewhat fiscally responsible or whatever. Joanne Burse is really good for Ward 6. If you live here, get a sign for her too. But I'm making sure to put up signs for the candidates I like. I think it's a good practice to be able to signal what you think is the right way right direction for the city to vote for. But I'll have a link down in the comments below, both for Sonia Sharp and Joanne Burse for Ward 6. But again, Raheem Jaffer is probably the best candidate for mayor in Edmonton. Easily the best candidate in Medicine Hat is Drew Barnes. And it's not because everyone else sucks. It's because Drew Barnes is a fantastic candidate on top of being the best out of the bunch. Anyways, so with that being said, see you guys all later.